Today's challenge is to utilize the underpainting filter in Photoshop Elements. I made this layout here some time ago when my son turned 21 and I was finding an old photo of him and being all sentimental and sappy. And here is where I applied the underpainting filter. You can see I just simply made a selection of part of my photo and did a Control J and then applied the underpainting to it in order to have a surface for which to put my title of my layout. I thought it really made a really neat effect using it in that manner for a title mat. And let's go ahead and look. I have a photo I took this weekend at a reenactment, and we're going to just play with the filter on this photo. It's found under the Artistic, and it does bring up the filter gallery. Now the settings, I'm going to leave this zoomed in for right now. The settings over here, there's quite a few of them, but what as I'm zoomed in over here, before we look at the settings, I want you to observe what the underpainting does. When a artist with a brush in his hand begins to paint, they will first paint an underpainting, which is you can see here as we zoom in. It's kind of hard to describe. Let's zoom in a little bit. Oh, that's a little too far. There's like splotches of paint without many details. You can see how it looks like it just, plopped the brushes down in the various colors on here. And that's what the underpainting is. They first paint the underpainting, and then they will paint the detail in later. So this just gets a good basis for the photo. And I really like this filter. I really do. It works best because it looks for lines in things. So if you have one like I do where there's a definite large subject, that also works well. The texture here is, you can imagine, most often painters are going to paint onto canvas, and so the canvas texture is going to show through. They give you some other options in Photoshop Elements. We have brick, as if you were painting on a brick texture, and I think that could really be utilized for some, if you think outside the box. I bet you can think of some cool uses for the brick one. And then burlap, if somebody maybe was painting on burlap, that's what that would look like. I like how it is pulling the burlap texture just into these darker areas on his poofed up parts of his shirt, and not these other areas. That's really cool how that one is working. And then there's also sandstone. I guess maybe if you get some poster board, you could think of maybe like the walls in your house. A lot of times people will put texture, they'll put sand in their paint and paint on the wall to add texture to it. So if somebody was applying an underpainting to a textured wall, it might look like this. So that's where you can utilize now and have a little bit more knowledge about the texture and how that is used in real life. Brush size, a lot of these we just have to play with. A brush size would be, you see how it's kind of making my splotches larger. and so the image is not quite as finite. I'll look at it down here in the horse maybe. And so if you want a lot more little bitty splotches, like the brush hit down a whole lot more times, then you're going to make the brush smaller. If you want something less more like a Gaussian blur, less detail, that's the word I'm going for, then you would make your brush size a lot larger. I kind of like it down low a little bit more of those splotches. Texture coverage, probably what we were looking at before in that one where it was in the creases. Probably that is going to affect those type of areas as we were looking. It looks for those lines and applies the texture in those different areas. You can see the more I go up, the more texture the entire thing has. Then it actually, I note here, is an arrow. If you click on this arrow, let me move it over a little bit. If you click on this arrow, it says load texture, and you could actually navigate to any grayscale .psd file and load any texture you want in here to really get a lot of control over this. So if you have any photo with it, and in fact I wonder what it would look like if we made our photo grayscale and then used it as a texture itself. That might be an idea. Use the same photo. Scaling, let's move this back over again. It looks like it's really making it more clearer as I go by. And relief, of course, relief works the same in all of them. Relief is how deep it looks like something is like engraved into the image, almost like scratched in. That's kind of really different there. And so then you also have your light, and top left is your normal for a lot of digital scrapbooking traditions, I guess I should say, or industry standards, but you don't have to stick with that. You can go with whatever you want. Maybe bottom right, bottom left. It doesn't really change it a whole lot, actually, in my opinion. And if you want to invert it, you could do that. You can see it didn't make too much of a difference. And when you get what you like, you hit OK, and it applies that underpainting. Now I want you to remember that you should consider, there it is, I had 2 layers. You should consider blending modes, lowering opacity, things like that. For instance, like this original one, let's say maybe I took and converted it, whoops, that's not the right slider, converted it to a black and white, and then maybe did an overlay with it. You're going to see it get some really cool, oops, better hold down my key, effects in the lighting that way. Yeah, you just got to play around and what screen would do. Actually, let's try normal and then lower the opacity. I'm not seeing the, I'm just playing around, you know. Whoops. There I go again. Not quite sure what they would do with these various effects. I don't see that working a whole lot. Oh, you know why I don't? Because I've got this layer on. I thought I turned that layer off. Well, let's just try playing around again. So here we go. There's kind of just barely letting that texture show through with the opacity. I was very baffled there for a moment. And here we go with the multiply or overlay. The overlay really makes it kind of pop. But so remember that you can do a wide variety of things with the blending modes. It's only limited by your imagination. See, this here might make a really cool background to your entire photo. This one here, I used the hue and lowered the opacity, and I think that looks kind of cool, kind of as a just ever so slightly. Anyway, go out there and figure out some way to utilize this underpainting filter in your layouts. Of course, I've given you an idea here, and you could even use this idea with any number of filters and have some fun and inspire each other, and woohoo!